walk you through every one of these questions and then give you from the answer, from an instructor's perspective, like that conversation I would have with you after class when you asked matter of fact, or maybe it was early in your decision-making process. All right, so here we go. Starting at the top. All right, so is the PMP harder than the CAPM? All right, so the CAPM, for those of you that don't know, is the PMP certification, but without the experience as a requirement. You don't need to have 3 years of experience. You just need the knowledge. All right, so yes, the test is more difficult than the CAPM, right? It's longer, right? There's more questions, but also the questions are more in depth. The questions are going to have you apply what you've learned through PMI's best practice, not just regurgitate the definition of the term, right? So, but you will see those exact same questions in the PMP exam sometimes. So some of the PMP exam questions are very similar to the CAPM in that they're pretty straightforward, easy regurgitation of the term's definition. But, other questions on the PMP exam will be so difficult, that you won't be able to answer it. It's just ridiculous. They don't have anything like that on the CAPM. So let's imagine that the test questions on the PMP question pool were scaled in difficulty 1 to 10. 10 being impossible, 1 being super easy. The PMP question pool is all of that. You're on the gamut of all of it, 1 through 10. So your test is randomized as far as how difficult your exam is, right? And so you could have an easy question on that topic or a very difficult one. Well, on the CAPM exam, you're only like pulling from the bottom of that scale, like levels 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's it, right? You're not going to get any like more difficult than level 5, 6, 7, 8. That's not going to be on your test. So it's the same knowledge base. It's just that the difficulty of the question is easier. All right. So yes, the CAPM is easier. That's the short answer. All right. Now, next question. Is the PMP still in demand? Yes, just from my own seeing it in classes and the demand for the class increasing. Yes, I would say it is. Um, and also like there's a lot of change going on in administration and things affecting, especially here in the DC area where I teach. And look, projects, change creates projects. That's oftentimes how organizations change is through projects. So in this dynamic situation, like the byproduct is going to be the need for more project managers, whether that's in government contracting or construction or, it just depends where, but the idea of having a PMP certificate is that you have the ability to jump from one industry to another. All right. So as one industry is not looking so hot and another industry is, you might jump ship. And how do you prove that experience? How do you get that, nod of confidence, especially if you don't know anyone in that industry or in that area, right? So having the PMP behind your name is telling the world, look, I've been there, done that. And so with all of this change, I only see it becoming more valuable over the next year or 2 years. Okay. As long as we're using it correctly, right? Like if you think the PMP is going to help you become a doctor and do surgery, then you know it's not going to help you at all, right? Remember, the PMP helps you transition, industries. It helps you prove your experience, right? Okay. Now back to your questions. Um, Question number 3. Oh, what is better, PMP or MBA? Oh, that's hard. So look, everyone's MBA experience is different. Loved my MBA experience. Had a blast. First of all, I did mine in Bangkok, Thailand. That's right. Bangkok University, baby. It was awesome. I had so much fun. I learned a ton. And so that's hard to say that the PMP is better than, right? So what do you define better as, right? How good a time I had? Because the MBA was awesome. But how do we, if the better is which one affects my marketability or, you know, ability to do a job or something? Well, I'd say the knowledge I learned in my MBA was very helpful and continues to be. The PMP, though, is really what opens doors for me when it comes to applying for a job or anything, because it's that mark of experience. So another way of thinking about this, um, having an MBA is telling the world, I have been educated to work at this level of management. That's what you're telling everyone. You put MBA. I've been trained to that level. Having a PMP behind your name says, I have worked at this level, whatever that might be, for a long dang while. All right. So one is saying I have the ability to, the other is saying I have. So it's not that they're necessarily, you know, um, in conflict with one another. I have both. I think it's great to have both, right? So just understand what each one says and how you're using that on your resume if you're using it to, get a job or whatever. But I do think the knowledge in both is excellent. All right, we're gonna move on. Our next question, how long does it take to get the PMP? All right. This is it's a different journey for everyone. So, our data shows, from all of the students I've had over years and years and years, that the majority of students are passing between 14 and 28 days after their course, right? So if you sit in with a class with me and we go through the 4-day course or maybe it's a 5-day course, depending on the format, at the end of the course, I'm expecting the largest cohort of people to pass the PMP exam between that 14 to 28 day mark, somewhere in there. Does that mean that's what happens to everyone? No. I will have students that take the PMP exam months later, a year later, and still pass, but everyone's different on this. So the idea is you want it to be relatively recent, or the material or your class be recent when you take the test, so that way it's accurate, but also you remember it. All right, but also at the same time, you need enough time to actually, go through the material and study. So I would plan for, a good 28 day, 21 day, 14-day study plan, depending on how aggressively, you want to be with your time and this material. All right. Myself, dyslexia, right? Captain Dyslexia over here. I had to read everything like 4 times, right? So it took me 28 days of study, and I studied for 8 hours a day. But that's me. All right. You don't have dyslexia, right? And maybe you do. I don't know. Right. But like it took me a while. It takes me because I don't believe anything I'm writing, and I've got to read it again and again. But that, everyone learns at a different pace. So just know you, I guess, is the right answer there. Um, can I pass the PMP without training? Yeah, you can. You definitely can. It's possible. It happens all the time, I'm sure. Um, but the PMP exam costs like 670 something dollars now. It's pretty expensive. Um, it's gone up a lot since when I took the thing. It's almost doubled in price. And yeah, do you want to, how many of those things you want to take? Right? How many times do you want to fail? Because understand that the vast majority of people who are PMP holders failed the test more than once. Did you know that? Most people don't know that. 40% of PMP holders passed on their first try. 60% of PMP holders, right, took 2 tries. All right. So, um, if you want to roll the dice twice, odds are that's going to take twice. So do people pass on their first try without training? Yeah, it can happen. It definitely can happen. It's not likely. You know, um, I would definitely suggest that you get training that's specific to that exam. And you'll see anyone, actually do this. If you feel that you might not need training, check out our pretest on our site. Go to the pretest. It's 40 questions. See how you do. It's a language test. That's what's going on with the PMP exam, is you're being asked a language. And if you're not able to speak PMI, then you're gonna fail. All right, so go try it on our website, see how you do. And if you're scoring in the 80 percentile, that 75 percentile range, man, go take the PMP exam. You're ready. You don't need training. Go for it. But if you're scoring below that, like the vast majority of people out there, then yeah, you're probably gonna need training, because the breadth of this course is pretty wide. And we're talking about, knowledge from the Lean Six Sigma world, understanding of government contracting, scheduling, earned value. There's a lot to cover. So, um, Is it possible to be done? Yes. It'd be rare though. All right, so let's see here. What is the PMP pass rate? Oh, wow. So it's not 60 70%. No. The actual passing rate is 50%. It's based off of a floating average. PMI intentionally does this. So 50% of the people who walk up to the line will fail and 50% will pass. And so it's based off of a floating average. And as we do better at these classes and as people know the material better, they're scoring higher and higher and higher. That's pushing the average score higher and higher and higher. So the test becomes artificially difficult because of us as test takers overstudying for the thing, right? So as you overstudy for it, you go out there and knock it out of the park. You've made the test a little bit harder for the next person. Now it's actually more complicated than that, but that's the idea. So what is the pass rate? I don't know. It depends on the floating average at the time you hit start and also how difficult your test is. So there's more to it than that. So understand it's not about trying to beat the PMP. Let's change mind frames here. It's not about trying to beat the PMP exam. You're trying to beat 50% of the PMP exam takers before you sat down. All right, that's what you're trying to do. Trying to outstudy them. All right. Um, do you need a PMP to be a project manager? No. This question has to be being Googled by people who are active duty military and looking to get out of the military. Right? Like that's the only way this can be a question. Right? But it's not saying that's like a more like a look, when you're in the military, people have a job title and they do this job, and that's how it is. So like no, in the private sector, there are plenty of people who run projects that are not titled project manager. The same thing in the military. You're not titled a project manager, but you're running projects. You're an officer in charge, right? NCO in charge, NCOIC, right? You're a leader of any kind, any mission, any tasking. Those are projects. All right. So we don't use the term project manager. We use the term, squad leader, platoon leader, company commander, right? Not the word project manager. And PMI knows that. So that's why the term project manager is an umbrella term for that duty position across different industries and methods with different names for it, like project engineer, team facilitator, right? So there's different names for it. You don't have to be titled project manager to run a project. And oftentimes organizations don't have project managers anywhere in the totem pole of power. There's no position. Right? They just say, "Hey, Bob from IT, do this thingy." And it's not even called a project, but it is. It's a project, and Bob is acting as the project manager. So the PMBOK guide discusses that scenario, right? When they talk about how organizations are structured and things. All right. So no, you don't need a PMP to run a project. Anyone can. Um, is the PMP exam open book? No, no. There are many. What they say, many references. There's 10 listed references to the PMP exam, and you have to go Googling through PMI's website to find them. But we list them in our class, right? In fact, behind our paywall, you get you have audiobooks and summaries of them all, right? But yeah, there are 10. And then the main ones being, the PMBOK guides, plural, and Agile practice guide being the main ones that they're citing. I have seen a lot of test questions citing the process guide, which was published after the seventh edition, and when they took the sixth edition down. But anyway, those are the main books that they cite. And no, you cannot take them into the exam with you, right? That's why the class is focused. That's why a boot camp is so focused on those materials. How much does the PMP exam cost? Right, like I said, it's $675 currently at the time of filming this thing, and that'll probably change. They change it all the time. You have to go to the PMI website to see. It seems to only go one direction though, up every time. And the membership part does reduce it, right? So you basically get the membership free your first year by getting a membership. It reduces your exam fees. I believe it might be actually a better deal this time around, but they're trying to encourage it. Anyway, you don't have to be a PMI member to take the PMP exam. So if you don't want to pay the membership fee, you can just take it. You just got to pay more. The full exam cost is $675, I believe. All right. It says non-members 555. It wasn't like when this came out, but they changed it recently. It's 675. All right. Let's see here. Does the PMP exam expire? All right, so does your certification, I guess, expires? The question is like, so it's not the exam expires, right? You get a certificate like that one, and it's sent to you, and then you frame it, you put it behind you, and you work and you point to it randomly. Yeah, but like that certification doesn't necessarily expire, but you have to maintain it. And you turn in what's called PDUs, professional development units, 60 of them every 3 years. And it's really easy to get PDUs. We talk about PDUs in our class as well and how to get them. You can go to PMI chapter meetings, just running projects. There's tons of ways of getting PDUs. So, no, it doesn't expire so long as you maintain your PDUs. All right. Is the PMP exam hard? Yes. I mean, everyone, whether it's hard or not, it depends. I will say that there is a portion of the population out there that'll be like, was it hard? No. For me, it was easy. All right. Just because they want to like inflate their ego or something and, make themselves sound smart in front of their peers. All right, as their instructor, they told me it was hard. I get it all the time. I asked almost all, I used to teach this as a semester course. I'd ask every student what they thought. Every one of them was jello after the exam. And like everyone's like, yeah, it's a hard test. Right. But then you see them like 6 months later and they're telling that new guy, like, oh, yeah, that PMP exam thing's easy. You know? And it's like, really? You just said it was hard to me. I remember you crying about it. Right. But so yes, it's difficult. So typically people will compare it to the other exams in their industry, whether that's the bar exam or the CPA exam or the PE exam, right? People compare it to that, or how difficult it is, whether it's more or less difficult in each one of those industries is slightly different, but they tend to have that, comparison that it is an industry level, difficult credential. It is hard. And everyone's gonna have to study, honestly. Okay. Does having the PMP increase my salary? It very well could. Now, if you're at the organization and you get the PMP and you're still at that organization, you don't really have a lot of bargaining chips at that point. I mean, who knows? Maybe you do. Maybe the organization has a policy. I don't know. I mean, every organization is different as far as how they do something like this. But I will say, there is a salary survey that PMI publishes, and it shows the data of what people make with a PMP versus in the same zip code not having a PMP. And I think it was around 35% increase for US PMP holders. They've done it for every like zip code in the United States and every region of the world too. So you can like look and see for your zip code what is the difference, what's the differential between a PMP holder versus the average. I'm not saying that you're average. I'm just saying that you're somewhere in there, right? And then compare yourself to the average for someone with a PMP. And you'll say like, okay, is that worth it for me? For me, 35% in perpetuity, worth it. It's worth. Now there's a chance that I just shine and I don't need that kind of, but it was worth it. It was worth it for me. The juice was worth the squeeze. All right. What is the PMP certification salary? It varies greatly depending on your industry. All right, in oil and gas that I worked in, project managers tend to make a pretty good amount, and we're heavily incentivized with bonus. So I'm not going to say not throw out a necessary number here because it depends on region. But I would definitely direct you to the PMP salary survey because it'll tell you by zip code exactly which one. And I'll put a link to that in the description of the video. How many years is a PMP good for? All right, like so we said, 3 years until you got to renew. All right, so having a PMP is saying that I am an expert in the current version of project management best practice and that it changes with technology. So you're supposed to maintain that with these PDUs. So every 3 years, you go out and get more PDUs, maintain your knowledge of the current best practice, and in humana, you get 3 more years. All right, so that's how it works. Um, can you get a PMP without a degree? Yes, you can. Having a degree, though, will shorten the amount of experience required actually running projects, being in leadership. Whereas if you do not have a degree, you just need 60 months worth of leadership time, right? Running projects. And that's one of my favorite things, though, is getting folks who don't have a college degree, to nail this PMP exam and then crush it in the private sector. Because honestly, it's a big mic drop putting that comma PMP behind your name. At least it was for my world. I don't even put comma MBA behind my name. It says comma PMP. I mean, honestly, my business card literally reads Mike Strachan, comma PMP, comma other stuff. All right. So, you know, um, the PMP enough said in my world, but every industry is going to be different on whether or not, and companies too, whether or not they respect it. So, yes, you can get a PMP without a college degree. And we already talked a little bit about how it's valued versus an MBA or something, right? So if you don't have a college degree, I would definitely suggest grabbing your PMP. All right. Is a PMP worth getting? We talked about the salary difference already. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and say cut that question, move on. What's the average age of getting a PMP certification? Also, I've seen this change in by region, right? I see that for the most part out here in like the East Coast, or at least the DC world, especially, that the students in my classes tend to be, if it's open enrollment, folks, in the private sector, they're not wearing a uniform, then they tend to be in that age range of like upper 40s, early 50s. Um, there are a couple of younger cats in the class, in their 20s, in their late 20s or something. But I'd say the average age is probably mid to upper 40s. But then on the East Coast, sorry, not East Coast, the West Coast out there in LA, I do see a younger class. Like when I was living in Denver, then like the class was typically younger, around like mid 30s, early 30s. Right. But you'll usually have a range in every class. You'll have like that, go-getter 28-year-old with an MBA and a, master's in psychology and something, you'll have that person in class. And then you'll also have that like, you know, guy is getting ready to retire in like 6 years. And so you have everything in between. All right. Is the PMP a tough exam? Yes, we already talked about it. It is difficult, and it's difficult because we've made it difficult artificially, not because any one part of it is hard, right? It's just the way in which we do it, right? Okay. How fast can I do the PMP certification? The very fastest could you get certified? Like right now, you want to, okay. So if you want right now, the fastest would be what you turn in your application right now. Like magically, you had an application ready to go. Maybe you downloaded it or something. I don't know where you grabbed it from, and you hit submit on the application. Well, it's going to take 3 to 5 business days, assuming you don't get audited, that for them to come back and say you may pay for your exam. Let's say it's three business days right there. All right. So you're 3 days in already. You pay for your exam fees, and then they email you back a voucher. So say you say you do that all early in the morning on that third day. And on that third day, you're able to schedule your exam as well. And magically, there's a test center open the next day because you can't schedule for the same day. All right. Say that the next day there's a test center open and you schedule your test then okay, then it could be done as soon as 4 days from right now. 4 days. Um, would I suggest doing that? No. No. As if you get audited, that's going to slow things down. That's one big thing, but also studying, everyone's going to be different. Okay, we talked about that already. But I have had plenty of students take the exam the day after the class. Like they take the PMP exam, the PMP prep course. They turn in their application right at the very end of the course, and they're taking it like 3 days later. I've had students who've turned it in beforehand because they're using education hours from another course, and they're sitting in my class as like a refresher, and then they take the test right at the very end and then the last day. And I'm actually batting 1,000. I've never had a student fail who does that. But I'm not saying I wouldn't suggest it, right? Because those guys are stressing out. Test is coming, in like the end of the class. So it's a little different course for those folks, but it can be done. So if that last answer the question of fast, I guess. Next question: can you take the PMP exam at home? Yes, you can. You can take the PMP exam at home. This happened during the pandemic. They were already testing it out. They were testing it out with the CAPM before this, but during the pandemic, they made it so you could take the test at home and it has all kinds of problems. I would highly suggest you take it in person if you can, but if you have to, then okay, take it from home. You can take it online. Make sure you do the system check though, and make sure you give yourself 6 hours of quiet for a 4 hour test. All right. Um, the next one, how many people fail the PMP exam first time? Like we said earlier, like of PMP holders, you're only looking at about 40% to 30% pass the PMP exam on their first try of the PMP holders out there, so the majority of people who have a PMP fail. So think about the number of people who fail the PMP the first time and then quit and don't pay for a second test and they walk away. Think of that number. That's got to be the like all right, so the ones that didn't quit, ponied up and came back and took the test again, that's 60% of the PMP holders. That's over half of the PMP holders failed the exam once and beat it the second or third time. So that should give you an idea as far as how many people fail on their first try. But I don't have the exact number, right? I don't have PMI's data, but I will say that the PMP exams given, at multiple test locations in every city all across this globe every day, every day, every day. All right. Do you really need 3 years of experience to take the PMP exam? No and yes. So, okay, it depends on your education level is the right answer here. So, if you have 4 year degree or higher, you need 36 months of experience. Okay, if you do not have a college degree, a high school diploma, you have a GED, then you need 60 months. Now, there is a special track. If you went through a PMI approved master's degree program, I believe it is, and there might be an undergrad one too, in project management. And you would know because your diploma says PMI on it. And so those folks only need 24 months of experience. And it's a very small crowd. They're not searching the web looking for PMP, because they already know they've been in a class that's all about it for the last like 2 years. So anyway, for the most part, it's 36 months if you have a college degree and or master's or PhD, and then everyone else is 60 months if they don't have one. Rarely do I haven't actually met someone in all of my time teaching this. I've not met a single person who has that situation with they only needed 24 months. Okay. Um, how do I get the 35 hours of experience? Okay, so it's one of the requirements to taking the test is the 35 PMI education units. So you can get this actually in a variety of ways. And the cheapest way of doing this is to go to the PMI chapter meetings and participate, right? You can get hours of education there. They will do like workshops where they'll train people and they'll go over sections of the PMBOK guide and they'll do study prep and things. And so you're able to get them that way. That is a way of doing it. And sometimes it's very rewarding and it's a great way of networking and hooray. Now it's not necessarily time efficient. It's not about your schedule and when you're available and spread out over a series of months to get those hours. And it's not necessarily going to be the best instructors, right? Because people need PDUs, and that's typically what they're doing is volunteering their time to get PDUs. It's something that they love to do. I mean, sometimes it is, right? But you don't necessarily get like the most enthralling instructor teaching a topic that they love. Um, it's typically a way of getting, your 35 hours. I'd say that inefficient way. All right. If we wanted to maybe take another step towards more efficient, right, make it easier for you, on-demand courses is another way, right, where you can go and get like a Unity class or something that now it's weird because the actual handbook says that virtual courses do not count like that. An on-demand course like that doesn't count. That's what it says. But either they haven't enforced it or maybe there's a rule that I need to be clarified on. But it might be with the included exam or something or some other way they're getting it through. But I do know people are using like Udemy courses and like distance learning products that are on demand, right? Like a series of videos that they watch whenever and they take their test. But I have not heard of good results doing that. Like the entire, it doesn't really matter who the provider is, whether that's PMI or it's X university or Y company. I have not heard of good results. For the most part, students are telling me that, there's a lot of a lot of people fail, a lot of retakes, and, the material is boring or they're not really understanding it. So, I think it takes a certain type of person to really learn in that format and which would make sense for you to do. So if you're going to take a on-demand course, then make sure you're good with distance learning. If you're that kind of person that learns that way, then do you. But it's not for everybody. Then there's those who take the course in person, right, with a live instructor, whether that's through their company or they're paying out of pocket at a open enrollment course or something. Those folks actually have the highest pass rates by far, and it's a big advantage to say self-paced study. Uh, and so the courses that I'm teaching with Royal Fireworks, we have a 99% first-time pass rating. I teach this class every week, 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 every week. The last person that I know that I've had fail my class was in October of last year. Yeah, so I know we prepare the students really well for the class for the exam, and that's why we have such a high pass rating. So that's also why people pay that much money, right? Because it gives them that edge. Now there are a lot of companies out there that demand that same price point, but they don't have that kind of result. So that is the trick there. Like when you're looking for one of those open enrollment courses, the 4-day boot camp style class, it's difficult as a student to figure out, are you really going to get what you want out of this, right? Because they don't oftentimes say who the instructor will be and say, here's their instructor style, or, and so it becomes a little weird. And that's one thing that, Rural Fireworks, we are doing is making it transparent who your instructor will be. So if you're doing an open enrollment class with them right now, it's going to be me. I'm the only one doing the open enrollment classes. All right. But anyway, 35-hour question answered. How many times can I fail the PMP exam? Well, you can keep failing until you quit. Honestly, okay, here's how it works though. When you apply, right, once your application's approved, you have 1 calendar year to pass the PMP exam and you get 3 swings at bat, right? Three tries. So you can fail 3 times, right, within a month, but you still got to sit out until your application expires. Okay, so you have 3 attempts in that calendar year from when your application was approved. That's how it works. Um, Now the idea is to pass on your first try, right? Don't need those other attempts, but all right. How long do I need to study for the PMP? Everyone's different. Everyone's different, right? And if I was to give you some magical, this is how, it doesn't work that way. Everyone learns in a different fashion. Everyone has different things going on in their day-to-day life, right? But there is a lot of material to cover. Some of you have a different starting point. Some of you already have an MBA. Some of you don't. Some of you have a Lean Six Sigma certification. Some of you have Agile certifications. And those things are helpful. They're helpful. It's not everything, it's a part of it, right? You'll have other things you'll need to learn. Everyone has something. So it depends on how much you need to learn and how much time do you have to put into this. And then you have to figure out that right duration to effort, mix to figure out how much study you need to put in per day and you can retain. And that will determine when you should take your test. Right? Everyone's going to be different there. All right. Um, what happens if I don't pass the PMP? So you'll get like a printout saying that you failed, and you'll also, I believe there's an email sent to you as well. But I know there's a printout. All the ones I've seen were covered in tears. So, but it's been a long time since I've seen one. I don't know if they issue them with the tiers already on it, but anyway, but yeah. You just take it again. You just pay your exam fee, take it again. Is 2 months enough to study for the PMP exam? Well, it's more than enough. I would say, for the most students out there, that yes, with a month is enough time. Like I said, 28 days to 14 days is normal. So 2 months would be enough, right? Yeah, of course, it depends once again on what you got going on in your daily life. Is the PMP exam all multiple choice? No, it's not. There are some drag and drop questions now. There are some like matching questions where you're grouping them into, or sometimes it's like we call a hotspot question where you click on the diagram to answer it. It's basically multiple choice but visual. So yeah, there are a couple, and we do offer those, right? So at Royal Fireworks, we have simulations of all of those, and that's something hard to find is a simulation of the drag and the drops and the hotspot questions. But we have that stuff. All right. And then finally, how do I get my PMP? Okay. So how do you get a PMP? So first we have to realize what we're getting ourselves into, right? The PMP credential is a is a mark of experience. So you had to have been running projects, you'd have been in leadership for a long while, at least 3 years, right? So you've been in leadership for a while and you want to prove that to other people, all right? And say, look, I have been in leadership. This is my stamp of approval. That's when you go get a PMP. All right, so then it's about meeting the requirements, the 35 hours of education. All right, that's a big part of it. And that'll definitely be a leg up because you got to beat that test, right? You're pitted in that battle royale, that PMP exam. Not everyone makes it in and out. So, if you want to have an advantage, come on down to class. All right, love to have you. With that said, my name is Mike Strachan, and I'll see you in class.